May I now request for the scintillating conversation to begin?
Good evening, everybody. I think this is the book we've all been waiting for. And that is a very quick and yet deep dip into the Indian scriptures. And it's a book that many of us have been looking for, asking for, but it's only somebody as brave, courageous, erudite, scholarly, and very fast in the way she produces good quality writing, and that is Sunita Pant Bansal, who was the right person to put this together. So very warm congratulations, Sunita. And the book is called A Comprehensive Guide to Indian Scriptures. And it looks slim, but it took me a while to read it. Because whenever I came to a word like Upanishads and I found 10 pages, I said, no, this can't be. I mean, I have to be able to find more details. And then I said, but that's not Sunita's intention. Her intention is that you look at this and then you go looking for the bigger book when you want to. And that's precisely what many people are looking for. So let me ask the publisher, Dipankar, do you have a video introduction to the book? Or
yes,
should we talk about it?
Yeah, I'll request the organizers to play the video.
Well, it's a summary of a summary. So I'm going to ask Sunita to elaborate for us a little more. What was the incentive, motivation, the driving force that gave you this energy to summarize and yet concretize the study of the Indian scriptures?
Thank you, Mala, and thank you everyone for coming here for the session, and thank you, Dipankar, also for publishing this book. Now, to answer your question, I have been writing on mythology for a long time, like more than 25, 30 years. So I had lots of notes and lots of material, photocopies and papers, and generally lots of notes. So, and I was planning at some point of time, I will create a book like this, but I didn't know when, because it's not easy to, because I'm writing so much. This was somewhere in the back of my mind that one fine day, I will put my notes together, make a book which will be helpful to me also. And then what happens is Dipankar calls me and he says, listen, Sunita, I want a book like this. I want a guide, a comprehensive guide on Indian scriptures, and I think you'll be the best person to do it. Will you do it? And that time I was swamped with another project, but he touched that thing in me. So I kept everything aside and I said, okay, I'll do it. And it was easy because I had material, I had the motivation. A publisher asking an author to write, I mean, why on earth would an author say no? So it stands to reason. I dropped everything, wrote this book. So it's, thank you, Dipankar, yet again.
Pleasure.
Good. If Dipankar is the motivating factor, the driving force, over to you. My next question to you is, as a publisher, how do you think this book is going to reach out to the different kinds of audience that you might have in mind? And I'm particularly thinking of the new interest that younger people are now showing in Indian scriptures, and the large old books that we have on classical traditions are very minute. They have loads of footnotes, very accessible. So, did you have accessibility in mind? Did you have a young readership in mind? I'm not sure if I'm pointing in the right direction. I'd like to hear from you.
Uh, First of all, congratulations once again and thank you for writing this book. Honestly, the idea of this book uh, came in through a lot of frustration with the kind of content floating around. Anything and
I'm
everything,
waiting for this answer because even I don't know why he asked me.
anything and everything was being peddled as scriptures. Anything and everything was being told as our holy books. And that's where I realized that somebody has to do a fact check. How would one do? Which sources to refer to? And there was so much. I tried doing it myself and realized it's beyond any normal person to go back and do a fact check on every fact thrown up at you about scriptures. That is when I went about asking her, and I was very, very cautious in using the word comprehensive because the word comprehensive in itself is a trick. Can it ever be comprehensive? Can it ever mean that we have covered everything in the book? Possibly not. There would be elements left out here and there. There are regional scripts. There are elements from a lot of regional context being left out. It is very difficult to find them. Some of them are now out of sources. You know, you only hear them through Smritis. They've never been documented. So they're all lost. So what could be done is, at any given point in time, pick up what's available, kind of document them, at least for somebody to have a starting point. Okay, fine. Now I know what to look for. Now I can go back and look for further sources and delve deeper into what is the right, probably, way to look at a Veda or a Upanishad. Think and understand what a Smriti is, how does Smriti convert into a document, so on and so forth. So that was the whole idea, Malashri. And access, I think what we saw as a response is phenomenal. A lot of young people show interest. And the first question is, how do I know this is already fact checked? So then we go back and give them all the relevant backend proofs that this is already fact checked. There are references, you go back and look at it. And that's how the proliferation has happened. A lot of schools have taken interest in the book. A lot of researchers have called out. We have reached out to universities in the US who have shown interest in kind of putting this book up in libraries. And that's just the beginning of the journey, I believe.
I'm so glad to hear from you, Dipankar, that there is such a widespread interest. So I'm getting back to Sunita on one particular detail, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, which everybody knows, but we are also aware that there are numerous versions, and there is no boundary between storytelling and epic writing and oral tradition, etc. Somehow, in the Indian tradition, the legacy, the heritage that we have, we don't believe in those boundaries. So, but when you put it down in the form of a chapter or two in this book, what did you do with the Ramayana and the Mahabharata?
Well, as you said, there are very many versions of Ramayana. So, in this book, what I've done is I've mentioned the main ones, the popular ones, because obviously it's not possible to get all of them together, but at least it gives a clear idea to people that yes, there are regional variations, and these are the main ones. And for regional variations, then they can check themselves. The idea is.
Give us an example.
No, I don't think I'd like to talk about the book here. I mean, what is inside of it. I would rather talk about what the book actually stands for, which is essentially to make people take interest in Indian scriptures. That's the idea. Because for me to sit here and talk about what is inside the book will not be right. I think let's talk about people taking interest. Why? Because they probably know less than what they should and what is out there. So in this book, what they can get to know is, for instance, the number of Gitas that are available, and the number of Ramayans, as you mentioned, and so on, and Upanishads and Shrutis and Smritis. So they'll at least get a vague idea, and then they can follow it up. If they're interested in some, particular Ved, for instance, they'll go deeper. Ayurveda, for instance, they'll go deeper. Or, Kala Shastras, I've mentioned them.
Yes.
They'll go deeper. That's the idea of this book.
Okay, so the idea is to give them the key information in a way, the search words.
Yes.
And then if they're looking for deeper information, they're going to be able to find that.
Yes, that's the idea.
So let me turn to Dipankar and the statement that you made earlier and what Sunita said, that the book has reached out to young people and to universities in India and abroad. So a lot of these people do not know what Indian scriptures are at all. So how do you think that this book is going to bridge the gaps between people and readers from diverse backgrounds?
Uh, it acts like an index for researchers for them to go and deep dive. It acts as a foundational guide for people who probably are Indians, know something about scriptures, and want to probably strengthen their knowledge for the next step. It acts like a detailed listicle for people who know about scriptures, know something about them, but still do not know the entire vastness of what it covers. What it also does is it lays to rest the entire debate about yours versus mine view of scriptures. Once you've done a listicle and you've covered most of the relevant pointers, as you gave an example, uh, Ramayana is a Ramayana. Okay, I'm just listing the Ramayana over here. I'm not saying how many versions of Ramayana there. So I'm not even going in the debate of whether it is your story versus my story. I'm just saying there existed a text like this. Now you go and do a research.
I'll add to this. In this book, I have not spoken anything about the religion aspect of it. I'm not talking of the rituals aspect of it. I'm talking about Hindu scriptures as they are, the Hindu philosophy as it is, and it's extremely democratic. And that is what I'm trying to show here. So anybody from any faith will read this book and understand more about our, Hinduism. I would say I wouldn't call it religion at all, but the Hindu way of life or the Vedic philosophy. That's the intent of this book. It doesn't have my opinion. It just has everything as it is. I just laid it out without adding my opinion to it, because that doesn't matter.
Which actually is a question which was worrying me, Sunita. Can a book really be without the opinion of the author or the interest or bias of the author showing? Maybe you've been able to achieve that, but let me be a little more specific. And what I want to ask is that, is there any aspect of the scriptures that you personally feel very impactful or very intriguing?
First of all, this was the challenge in writing this book. Collating data was not a challenge because I already had it over so many years. The challenge was to filter out opinions of people, that I was reading. So yes, that was challenging. And the one thing that has impacted me from our scriptures is when I was doing a book on Puranas for young adults. And that was the time when I was going through Puranas, and that's when I realized that, whether you look at Shiv Puran or Vishnu Puran, or Brahma Puran or even Devi, what happens is they all, the Puran would attribute everything to the title of the Puran. Like if it's a Devi Puran, everything comes from Devi, likewise Shiv and so on. And the creation happens from that particular god, whose name is there on top, the protagonist of the Puran, so to speak. So I felt that everything is leading to the same thing. So we are talking of one energy source, and that have multiple names. Now that is the major impactful thing that comes through our Hindu philosophy, that there's one source of energy, and that is why I'm saying it's a very democratic way of life. In one house you can have 4 people following 4 different gods and nobody's fighting, right? So that is what it is all about. So that was the thing that made me go deeper into this, and I could be non-judgmental.
Well, that's a very beautiful answer to what the purpose was, that you're actually capturing the energy field of the spiritual, intellectual inheritance and legacies of the Indian scriptures. So we now maybe open it up to the floor. There may be some queries. We have a few minutes for that. If people could raise their hands, and please keep your queries very short, because we'd like to give lots. lots of people some chance. So, yeah, where is the mic? Go ahead, please. Just would you mind standing up? It's just easier for everyone to know who's asking the question.
Question is, how were the different scriptures in Hinduism, like were they inspired by thoughts which were based in Central Asia?
You got to read the book.
Yeah, I mean, let's keep the questions to the discussion we've just had. And what Sunita has done is given us a bird's eye view of the book, and Dipankar has talked about the audience that it aspires to reach out to. You have the mic here. That's right. Give it to this person in the first row, please.
Thank you, ma'am. My question is actually about the how did you tackle the problem of verifying nearly extinct scriptures like Charvaka? And did you only talk about Vedanta?
Oh no, when I say scriptures, it's everything, no? Vedanta, then we come to Smriti. So I've covered all the possible scriptures, So as far as finding material, I've been working on this particular line of mythology. So I have been collecting a lot of data. I've got some great books. Some I've downloaded. Some, I've gotten from libraries. Some I've bought. I've got a huge collection. So there've been lots of notes making for the last 30 years. That's a lot of work, actually. So I already had the sources, the right sources that I didn't really need to verify. So I had to just kind of put together. And I've covered everything. It's like, Shruti, Smriti, and then even the Kalas, as I mentioned earlier. And that was an add-on because I met a person who was talking about Samudrik Shastra, and he was talking about how he could read the face and, hands and feet and talk about the past, present, future, and so on. It was very fascinating. So I added a chapter, because of that conversation, I added a chapter here in Kalas.
And on popular demand, we will request her to also go into a PhD now.
I love writing books. PhD was not in my head. That's one hell of a
Well, I've
dissertation.
also known Sunita as a scholar and a writer for many years. She has an amazing filing system, either in her study or in her mind. I'm not aware, but it comes from years of deep study and keeping thorough notes. So it's something to be valued, really.
There's a question there.
Question.
And one here. Okay, the mic is here.
Thank you.
Okay.
My question is about the decision making of the title. That why did you choose the Indian scriptures? And I'm very nervous and worried asking this because you knew that it was only Hindu scriptures, right? And you knew those scriptures are also from outside India, for Nepal, for example. So why Indian scriptures in particular?
So I'm going to answer this question, and also with your
Yes.
permission, I'll answer his question as well.
Yes.
So when we look back at the original list, there were scriptures from the region, okay, and we had to draw a line somewhere, because if we did not draw a line, we would end up having scriptures from China, which are probably in Tibet now. We would have scriptures in Central Asia, which even though are similar in our philosophy, but they are a part of a different body of knowledge right now. So it is also, you would possibly say, trying to be somewhat politically correct to ensure that the book reaches the right audience without creating any kind of a controversy which will derail the objective of the book. The objective of the book stands clear, that let us all have one single verified source which we can refer to when something is thrown at our face in the name of a scripture. So that's the summary answer. Extending to your question here, the time when scriptures were written, okay, there was nothing called India. Everything was porous, right? So nobody can, with any amount of confidence, say that these are only Indian scriptures. But what has happened is, at the time of Genesis, they were all verbal. But when they started getting codified and written down, that's a part of current India. So that way you can possibly and arguably, with some bit of accuracy, say these are Indian scriptures. So that's the kind of background to both these questions.
I think that's a very important point. You know, the orality of the telling of the scriptures, and it got written at various points, and it got captured and integrated also through a very large geographical spectrum. We can take maybe one or two more questions. Is the mic somewhere here? There's a lady here in the third, fourth row. Yes, please.
First of all, I would like to say thank you. My husband is Indian. We've been married for 16 years, and this is exactly the book that I wish I'd had when I first got married. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
a little late, but better late than never. I'm very excited to read it. The other thing is, this gentleman brought up a very good point. We've heard how through the Golden Road, how the traditions of this area have influenced so much. And, you know, there are scriptures from, like what you said, from Tibet, from Nepal, from, you know, that are in China. Have you, I know this is, you know, you're just launching it right now, but that would be a fascinating next step, is to, you know, look at how some of these scriptures, you know, compare, contrast, you know, looking at kind of the journey that these scriptures had made. It would be fascinating.
While I'd love to do that,
You're giving
book,
him ideas. You're giving him ideas.
thank you for the question, and I'll answer in three parts. First of all, you're wearing a lovely sari. Second of all, thanks to William. He's already done half our work. So when you read his latest book, you will know that what he's defining as Indosphere is nothing but influence of our philosophy. Philosophy which probably converted into from oral to the written tradition at some point in time and started traveling with times. And yes, if Sunita agrees and we have an opportunity, we would go deeper into sections of this book to understand what more can be elaborated. In fact, one big body of knowledge remains to be explored, and I keep telling this that we refer to the old Kashmiri civilization as the fountainhead civilization of India, and there's something called Raj Tarangini. If somebody has to open up that particular scripture and that book and read through, there's so much knowledge in there about our codified history that it's amazing. We should be doing that. And yeah.
So I think we'll need to complete the session, and I think it's very exciting when there is an author who's ready with a lot of material in her mind and on her desk, and a publisher who is willing to explore new areas, and this wonderful audience that loves books, and maybe there are writers sitting right here, Dipankar,
Yes.
who will come up with proposals that you might want to consider.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for this lively session, and thank you, Sunita, for giving us this book, and Dipankar for opening up the window for more such books to be published.
Thank you, ma'am, for the lovely questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Mala.